Alright, what's going on, everyone? Big stream today. We get to talk about the very final chapter of My Hero Academia. Now, full context, I have read the chapter, but I want to read the official chapter, obviously, and give my, at least for right now, final take on the ending. What's up, Grayson? How you doing today? Hope Horikoshi made enough for a living with MHA. I think he's doing just fine. Between manga sales, movie ticket sales, merchandise, licenses, I think he's doing just fine. While we wait for everyone to come in, I'm going to go ahead and share the stream. Justin, how you doing? Pleasure to have you. Also, full disclosure, there will be spoilers for My Hero 430 in this stream. I am going to avoid them until the end of the chapter, but obviously, be mindful if you're not caught up. Why is My Hero Academia ending a problem? Well, let's talk about it, right? I mean, I won't get into it yet because I do want to read the chapter before we talk about it, but I think for a lot of people, it was just kind of a not bad ending, but just lame in a way. Like, it does everything it was supposed to, and yet it still feels lacking. And of course, whenever a chapter or whenever a story ends, everyone's going to have complaints. But I feel like with My Hero's ending, there were enough of people saying the same thing, where it was like, okay, clearly something that should have been in here was missing. It was a rather bittersweet ending, which I didn't expect from such a lighthearted series. Yeah, but also no. I'm also excited to read the new Jujutsu Kaisen chapter, because I have a vague idea of what happens, thanks Twitter, but I have not read that chapter. I will say, I think this is going to be one of those situations where after a year or so, I think people will come to like the later parts of My Hero more. But I will say, I don't think this is going to be remembered as one of the better endings in manga. At least in my opinion. I could be wrong. Yeah, regardless of what you think of the ending, My Hero had one of the best runs in like fiction, not just Jump or manga. I mean, easily one of the most influential manga. Um, I mean, I would go so far as to say it's this generation, like the young generation's Naruto. So let's go ahead and look at the chapter. So My Hero Academia, chapter 430. Of course, it opens with a very nice double spread of Class 1A. We got Aizawa and we got All Might. So we turn to the page and we get a reference to the end of the Shigaraki fight, or the All for One fight. It's already been destroyed. That depends on what you people decide to do tomorrow. So that's kind of setting the stage for the time skip. And then we have Deku reiterating the quote from chapter 1, people are not born equal. And then he kind of adds to it, we each take shape differently, which leads us to care about others. It's because one's mind and body are unlike anyone else's that we're drawn to others in the search for common ground. So in chapter 1, he says people are not born equal, and it's almost discouraging. Like the way he says it, it's just like you're born the way you are. There's nothing you can do about it. People are just, they're stuck. But when he says it this time and adds these additional ideas, it's almost inspiring. It's like people are not born equal, and because of that we have all these different experiences, which I think is really cool. Now, something I didn't notice, and I don't think anyone else has pointed it out, is if you look at the first page where we have what's his name, the kid with the sneakers and the funny hat from the summer training arc, I can't remember his name. Next to him, so he's calling for Midoriya, and next to him is another student with scars on his lips. So to me, that looks like the kid from the previous chapter who came out of the basement and was ready to destroy the world, but then he got saved. I just noticed that, and I don't think that's been confirmed by anyone yet, but it seems to be the case that this is a confirmation that that kid grew up and actually made it into UA, which is awesome. So we turn the page and we get another double spread, this time kind of showing the passage of time in the last 8 years. We have Deku going back to see his mom. We have All Might helping Gran Torino. Did the music stop? Oh no, just got quiet. Also, I see everyone's comments. I'm waiting till I finish the chapter to respond. But we have everyone taking exams. We have Mirko getting all kinds of cool upgrades. We have Mount Lady and Kamuy Woods working together. Kota, that's his name, Kota. We have Kota and Eri with what's her name? Kota's cousin or aunt. It seems like they're having kind of like a play date. I don't really know. We have Hawks and Tokoyami, so that's cool that they're still like they stayed connected in a way. We have Aizawa and Mike. What the hell is his name? But they're paying tribute to Shurakumo, their friend. He was Kuroguri. And then we have Endeavor. Let me see. I didn't really take a close look at this one. We have Endeavor in his wheelchair. And I'm pretty sure he's hanging out with his sidekicks. I thought that was his family the first time I see it, but now that I look at it, I see Burnin. So I think that's all his sidekicks. I don't really know what's going on with this one panel in the middle where Class 1A is facing this person with long hair. And they're all like waving to them. I don't know who that is. In the dead center of the double spread, we have Shoji and what's his name? The one that can talk to animals. They're sort of accepting some sort of award or something. In any event, it's like, hey, this is what's going on with the heteromorphs. At the top, we can see a panel of a book on the League of Villains, showing that, in fact, Spinner went on to publish those books. We see a panel of Bakugo with the hand scrunchie, whatever it's called, showing that he's going through rehab and everyone's cheering him on. We get a panel of Deku and Ochako hanging out in the snow, which is fairly ambiguous. And then we get one page of this guy just looking at a book. I don't know who that is. Someone will have to tell me. And then we see their graduation event where they're giving the speech, and then Bakugo blows up as like a final goodbye to the classes. And then, of course, we get Deku saying, I had one for all. Now the embers are leaving. Why am I still writing this? Because there are more pages yet to come. And then, of course, we get the 8-year time skip. So we get the time skip. It skips to a young class of middle schoolers all applying to high schools. It shows us kind of the organizations that have come to place in the 8 years. We have Hatsume, who has come to establish what appears to be the biggest support item company. Excuse me. We have the Yoshi-looking doctor, Dr. Ryu Yoshida, who has become what seems to be like the top doctor in the country. And then we have Gentle and Labrava's company. I'm still not sure what they did. Oh, it's a coding company, I think. I want to join Gel Inc., which went down in history during the Cyber War 5 years ago. Girl bosses who can code are too awesome. So it's like a, I would guess it's like a cyber security company. And then, of course, we get like a para Deku, the kid with like the mushroom looking hair, who, of course, just like Deku in the beginning, wants to go to UA, and everyone's like, huh, tough chance. And then we see him, and he's been inspired by Deku. So that cues us into the fact that even though Deku isn't a pro hero, everyone knows who he is, and he's a legend alongside All Might. So then we get the panels of Shoji, Uraraka, and the other kids, and it tells us that Shoji has, what did he do? Something about heteromorphs. Devoted your efforts toward finding peaceful resolution to conflicts surrounding discrimination based on body type, which is still a concern in rural areas. In recognition of your achievements and influence, he gets a major prize. Something interesting about that, the way it's worded, is so they say it's still a problem in rural areas, which I do like the focus on the sort of culture between the big cities where there's obviously a lot of heroes, and then the rural parts where it's not as concentrated. But I kind of don't like how that's discussed, because obviously this is my hero, and all the heroes ideally would be less biased, especially in the time skip. But it kind of phrases it like, oh hey, we fixed racism in the cities, so only people in the country, only people in small towns, those are the racists. I don't know. It's a silly complaint to have, but it did cross my mind. Still, it does show that this generation of heroes is making systemic changes. And then, of course, we have Ochiko, and she has the, what do they call it? They have quirk counseling, which is thought to be the most essential initiative of all in this day and age. So pretty obviously a reference to the fact that had Toga had an adult or role model to guide them in the right direction and be more accepting of them, things would have turned out a lot differently. So now, of course, Ochiko takes up that flame, and she's like, hey, we got to do an outreach program, recognize that not everyone's the same, and kind of tailor things to each kid. Which, I mean, come on, that's like the perfect change to the education program. And then we get a panel of Eri. She's all grown up, very pretty with her long hair. She's got the school uniform, she's got her guitar, showing us that she's still carrying on the music thing. And I believe showing us that she went to UA. I'm not sure though. I don't know that that's confirmed. Excuse me. So then we skip to Aizawa, who pretty much looks the same, but now he's got shorter hair to show us that he's getting older. He says, hey, you seen this, Midoriya? Your old pal's about to drop on the billboard again. And then they look, and it's Bakugo. Somebody's recording him, and he's like, get out of my face. This isn't TMZ. So then they talk about Todoroki. We see Todoroki, and, he's got a bit of a glow up himself, which in that one panel, Bakugo looks exactly the same. But Todoroki does look like he's grown up a bit. And then we get to see Deku say that they think of Todoroki as Endeavor's son less and less, which is pretty cool. We find out that Togata naturally ran to the top of the charts. Although I'm curious where Hado and what's his name ended up on the charts, because you would think they're pretty up there. But it is nice to see that Togata became the top hero, because, I mean, let's face it, after Deku, he was like the next All Might. And then probably my favorite part of this chapter is the part where Deku's talking about, like, oh, you know, I wish I could have been a hero, but it's cool being a teacher. And then he goes, I'm pretty awesome now, right? Maybe? And then Aizo was like, you should be stricter with your students. And then just Deku's face of, like, disappointment and frowning. It's like such a derp face. I love it. If it was a little bigger, it would be the perfect reaction face. And I'm hoping they capture that same level of, like, derpy emoji reaction when this eventually gets animated. So then they talk about, ever since we all started working together, our time off never seems to line up. It's hard to plan get-togethers, which a lot of people were kind of pissed about. There's two parts of that. The one part is, like, you know, they were all such good friends in high school and now they barely talk to each other. Excuse me. And the other part of that is it is kind of disappointing to see that, like, Deku is still at UA by his own choice, of course, but everyone kind of grew up past him. So it does, even if it's not the case, it does feel as though they kind of left him behind. And we even see, like, there's statue in the panel where he says we can never hang out anymore. It shows a statue of all of them as heroes, and then it's him walking throughout the streets, and he can see all of them everywhere on posters, billboards, statues. He says, I get a kick out of seeing everyone's success. So it's not like he's, you know, depressed, but he is kind of nostalgic. So now he runs into this kid who's basically like Deku 2.0. And we get a flip of the whole Deku and All Might scene from chapter 1. And the kid says, can I become a hero? We see the kid talking about, or we see Deku talking about the kid's quirk, muttering to himself, which is a nice touch. It shows that Deku is still same old Deku. And then we see that he tells the kid, well, hey, if you're the first to jump out to help people, then of course you can be a hero, which kind of ties everything together. It's a nice loop to chapter 1, but it also highlights all the great stuff about the final arcs. And then, of course, so it says My Hero Academia, the end. And then All Might takes it, squishes it, and it's like, haha, just kidding. They're talking about how they had plans to meet up, him and All Might, and he brings the new suit for him. He says, the data obtained from the battle between me and All for One 8 years ago apparently opened up all sorts of exciting possibilities, so they tell me. So he gives him this suit, and he's like, oh, this must cost a fortune. And he goes, well, my overseas friends and all your old classmates, especially Bakugo, funded this. And then he says that he earned this power. So then we get a panel of Bakugo saying, "Come on, Deku." And we get a panel of Hawk saying, "More time to kill than ever." Traffic's all backed up because of a landslide on Warstar Road. We get a panel of Deku looking back, and he sees a ghost or sorts of Shigaraki, which implies that even now he still thinks about Shigaraki, which you can take to mean a bunch of things, but mainly just the idea that, like, this is why he does it. And then we get the double spread of everyone grown up. Now, this is a pretty decent double spread. I do wish we had gotten profiles of everybody, because we can see some characters better than others. But I mean, to be fair, it's only been 8 years, so it's not like they would have changed that drastically. But still, it's a nice way to end the chapter. You do get to see everyone in Class 1A. But at the same time, I kind of wish we had gotten profile shots. But regardless, that is the end of chapter 430. So before I share my thoughts, let me see what everyone had to say. We have Leon Glitch. No, sorry. Where are we? I don't mind the ending, but I do think it could have been better, maybe if it was a longer epilogue. Yeah, I do think we could have benefited from a couple more chapters. I do think there was a lot of stuff that should have been addressed, and we didn't really get to see enough of it. So I think we should have gotten at least 3 chapters of this time skip instead of just 2, or just the 1. So we have Sasuke's resolve saying, "I don't really like the meme of it. TikTok making the Deku working at fast food restaurants is so much projecting." It's projecting, but also it's hilarious. Like, regardless of what you think of this ending, Coda, thank you. I do think the McDonald's memes are hilarious. Where do you think Deku will work after he gets older? So, this is kind of a question I have in my mind, because, again, this is another reason why I wish the epilogue, like the time skip, had been like maybe 2 or 3 chapters. Is like, this kind of leaves it open. Like, so does Deku stop being a teacher now and he goes pro hero full time, or is he just like Spider-Man where he kind of just does it for fun, right? One of my problems with this final chapter is it's too ambiguous. Like, in this case, for example, it's the best of both worlds, because on the one hand, you do get Deku losing his quirk, but on the other hand, he still gets to be a hero. So, in that sense, it's like an open-ended ending. Like, it's open to interpretation, but it's not definitive enough. Like, it is inoffensive, but at the same time, it's like a non-answer to that question, I guess. And there's a lot of things like that where you kind of get just non-answers. I'm mad the guy who appeared in the epilogue, that mysterious Shigaraki looking guy, isn't even him. So did we get a confirmation? Because, so if you go to, it's either like chapter, or it's either page 3 or page 2, but it's the page with Kota calling, and he's like, Midoriya, I mean Deku Sensei, and there's a kid right next to him with scars on his mouth. I'm gonna zoom in on this. It looks like the kid from the previous chapter. So did Horikoshi comment, or was there some kind of official confirmation like, hey, that's definitely not him? Because it looks like a grown-up version of him. Again, that's another thing, is like, you get like this side shot of this ambiguous looking student. So it's like, is it him? It looks like him. It's weird seeing Deku being a hero / teacher. I actually like the fact that he's a teacher. I think it kind of, in a lot of ways, this last chapter is very symbolic for people who started this manga 10 years ago. Because a lot of people finish school and they face this crossroads. And a lot of those kids who were like, you know, the straight A students, the people who love to be in school, they end up becoming teachers. And if anybody is like that, it's Deku. So I mean, I think it makes all the sense in the world that he became a teacher. And I also think Horikoshi did a good job of his redesign for the time skip, because Deku is so innately like a kid, like a teenager. So one of the issues with making him look older is like, how do you make him look like he's grown up without making him look like a grown-ass man like All Might? And Horikoshi did a really good job with that. Yeah, so let's talk about that. So Justin said the only thing Horikoshi forgot to reveal was Deku's dad. I'm going to be honest, I don't care. I don't care that we didn't see Deku's dad. Deku's dad was never an important part of the story. This was made clear after the fact that like 100 chapters into the story, like he still was not even like a reference, like nothing at all. So the fact that he doesn't appear in the last chapter, it's like, who cares, you know? Like, if he wasn't relevant for 429 chapters, why do we care about him in the final chapter? So I do think, you know, I get why people are upset by that, but I think it's nitpicking, especially when for 429 chapters, like, the guy was nowhere to be seen. It would be like if I'm trying to think of an example. It would be like if I'm trying to think. I guess it would be like in the Superman comics, like you saw Superman's mom from Krypton in, you know, whatever, volume 5. But then for 10, 15 volumes, you never see, I forget what his name is in the comics, but Jor-El, I think is his dad's name. You never see him. And then he just shows up randomly in the very last chapter. Like, you wait until the very last... I don't know. If the character is irrelevant, then they're irrelevant. Like, I don't really care to see them. It would just... Especially when so many other characters that were actually important should have made an appearance. Like, why would we use that screen time to make a cameo for a character that has had no impact on the story? So I do get what people are saying, but I just think it's a silly complaint to have. Deku losing his quirk and then becoming a hero with support items is so bad. I don't think it's bad, but like I said, I don't even want to call it a cop-out. The only thing I don't like about it is, like I said before, just the fact that, like, it ends on sort of a open-ended note of, like, so is he still going to do the teacher thing? Is he going to be a full-time hero now? Like, what's the deal? That's my only complaint. Other than that, I think it makes perfect sense. If anything, I think it's too predictable, which is another thing I'll talk about in a few minutes. So we have JK Network. My main issue with the ending is it goes back on what MHA set up for Deku. Even the most controversial endings like Naruto stick with what they set up. Even Universe Zero stayed consistent in Eden Zero's themes. So JK, I'll ask you this. How is it inconsistent with the themes of My Hero? Because I think it's perfectly consistent. I think, if anything, it's just too predictable. It didn't stray enough from what it established. If you think this chapter goes back on any of the core themes of My Hero, I seriously encourage you to reread chapter 1 and then reread the last 30 chapters. So, like, even what I did, I went back to chapter 406. Because to me, this is perfectly consistent with everything that was set up. It was just too predictable. Blazing Boy, what's going on? How am I doing? Or how did I like the ending? So if I was going to give this ending a rating, I would give it like... I'd give it like a 6, probably. Maybe a 7, but probably like a 6. I'd say, no, I'd give it like a 7. It's good. I wouldn't say it's mediocre. I'd say it's good, okay. Should have been a little fleshed out more, and it's a little too predictable. So JK also says everything with Shigaraki's ending was also a flop. Waste of perfect setup for an underdog villain. The thing about Shigaraki, and it all ties in, the final chapter, the last 30 chapters, the final arc, it's too cliche, in my opinion. Like, the fight with Shigaraki pretty much went exactly how I imagined it would go down 50 chapters before it happened. And that's my issue with it. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's cliche. I don't need to reread because it was set up for Deku to be the greatest hero, and yet he barely gets credit. Not true. Loses his power, which wasn't set up. That's also not true. It was definitely set up. I mean, everyone who got one for all eventually lost their power. Like, they eventually just became a phantom, a fragment. Like, the whole idea of one for all is, like, it has a mission, pass it on to the next person, or, you know, defeat all for one. And he defeated all for one, so he completed the mission, so that's the end of the quirk. So it was set up. And then ignored by most of it. So again, not ignored. It's just this situation of, like, you know, they all kind of have their own stuff going on. So he's not ignored. It's just, it does kind of feel like he gets left behind, but that's not the case. As you can see in the ending, they spent all this time and money to give him a hero suit. So he's not being ignored. So the thing with, let's talk about this. The thing with Deku not becoming the top hero, you have to understand that the whole point of My Hero Academia was to establish this paradigm shift in what it means to be a hero. Because it opens with, this is my story of how I became the greatest hero. And then in the final chapter, it's like, oh, well, we all became the greatest heroes. So on its face value, it's like, oh, it's a cop-out. You know, Deku should have been the top hero, but it's like, we all get to be the top hero, right? Like, at face value, it's like, oh, well, that's stupid. But what you have to understand is when you go back to the All for One fight, like Deku against All for One in Shigaraki, Horikoshi makes an explicit contrast between Deku and All for One, with All Might. With All Might, the reason people feel inspired by All Might is because he's so strong and powerful. So they feel inspired to cheer for the good guy, right? It's like, oh, he's gonna win. Like, let's root for him, right? With Deku, the whole point wasn't that he was strong, but rather that he was weak and he fights on anyway. So the people who watch him feel inspired not because they know he's going to win, but because they want to take action and help his cause. Like, they want to join the fight. So with that, you get two definitions of what it means to be a hero. With All Might, it's, you know, fight for others. And with Deku, it's something along the lines of, you know, inspire others to carry on the fight, right? Like, inspire others to fight for themselves and others. So when we get to this ending, it's actually perfect that people are pissed off by this chapter, because it shows that there's a paradigm shift. And if you're pissed off by the fact that Deku isn't the top hero, it shows that you're still in that same, you know, old paradigm, the paradigm that led to corrupt hero society, that led to all the discrimination, all the bias, you know, all the elitism, all the neglect. But if you like the fact that Deku becomes a teacher and he inspired everyone else to be the best hero they could be, then you understand that to be a hero in Deku sense means to inspire others to be the change in the world. And there's a bunch of examples of this, like in the previous chapter, or one of the previous chapters, Hawks talks with Lady Nagant, and Lady Nagant says, I'm going to stay in jail. I'm going to wait to see how things will turn out. And then Hawks kind of laughs, but then he says, no, it's a matter of how will we change things, which touches on what we're talking about. It's a matter of you can't just wait for an All Might or an Endeavor to change the world. You have to be the change you want to see, which is exactly what Deku accomplishes. He inspires everyone else to be the change in the world that they want to see. It's why we get Choji, and all the programs with the heteromorphs, and it's why we get Ochako and the quirk counseling program. You can't just say, oh, well, if we cross our fingers and wait long enough, then people will be more tolerant, they'll be more accepting. No, you have to take action. So in that sense, My Hero Academia executed on everything it set up and is perfectly consistent with all of the story's central themes. Okay, so now what you're saying is Deku barely gets credit. Again, not true. You see with the little kid that Deku is a legend. Like, everyone knows what Deku did. Maybe everyone isn't showing up to his house every day like, oh my god, you're the best hero ever. But he's so famous that a little kid runs into him, like a 13, 14-year-old kid runs into him and immediately knows who he is. So the fact that he doesn't get credit is also not true. So we have Blazing Boy saying, I think what many don't like is him losing his quirk because the quirk made him the best hero. But how could he be the best without the quirk? He just had to keep the quirk. Again, I think this is just a matter of preference. I think if you liked Deku because he was cool, because he had cool powers, then, or because he was a hero in the traditional sense, then of course you don't like this ending. But if you like the fact that Deku is still a hero in this new sense, then this ending makes all the sense in the world. Again, there's no right answer. Like, it's not a case of like, well, if you don't like this chapter, then you're just stupid. It's a matter of there are certain things that Horikoshi set up, and if you like what he did with those things, then you're going to like this ending to a certain extent. But if you don't like how he executed on everything he set up, then of course you think this chapter is stupid. So again, it's really just a matter of how you like the execution. So Wano in the chat says, but OG, they still have the hero rankings, so society still hasn't changed that much. If you remember, Hawks said, well, we're going to rely less on pro heroes, but we're still going to keep the hero ranking in place, because when you have people like Endeavor, it inspires them to be heroes. So it's kind of like a circle of, well, we don't want to rely on just pro heroes, but at the same time, you do need these symbols to sort of inspire people. And he even said, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, if something works, it works. but that doesn't mean it can't be changed for the better. I'm not saying, to answer your comment, JK, I'm not saying that Horikoshi like stuck the landing on everything he set up. Like, there are a lot of character arcs that either didn't, like, he didn't fully resolve, or that he did. And let me say that again. There are character arcs that either didn't get properly resolved, or they got a conclusion and they just fell short. So I'm not saying anything about Shigaraki's character arc. I'm not saying anything about all of the character arcs. What I am saying is, as far as the story's central themes go, he took all of those to their logical conclusion and showed what they would look like in practice. Execution alone proves it was not done well. The way Deku sounds in the first episode does match the final chapter. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Yeah, I will say, to address what Jose said, isn't All Might's quirk supposed to be way more powerful than all of the other quirks? This truly shows that the power scaling is even more bullcrap. As far as right now, I don't really like how All Might was handled after we learned about all the different quirks. Because first it's like, oh, Willy has this quirk and it's super powerful. And then we find out that One for All is this thing that gets passed down. And then we find out that All Might didn't have a quirk to begin with. So then it's like, well, what the hell was his quirk? And again, this could just be an issue of me needing to do my homework and I need to go back and reread things. But I feel like it was one of those things that Horikoshi didn't really plan out thoughtfully enough. But I also think it's one of those things where it doesn't hurt the story all that much and you don't really need to think about it that hard. Again, I'm like 50-50 on it. Yeah, no, JK, that's fine. Again, I don't think this is the perfect ending. I do think it's the perfect ending for My Hero Academia. Soul, what's going on, my dude? Soul, what do you think about the ending? For those of you who don't recognize the name, Call Me Soul, aka Soul, is one of my editors. So everyone make sure to give him a shout out. So for the sake of conversation, to illustrate one of my points about where this chapter falls short, that I'm not really seeing a lot of people talk about, and I'm going to keep this spoiler free, but one manga that I think has a perfect ending is Fire Force. And I'm sure you've seen other people say this, especially now. I know a lot of people are making comparisons to Full Metal Alchemist, and I'm not going to get into that. But one reason I like the ending of Fire Force so much is It's because it does everything an ending is supposed to. It resolves character arcs, it answers questions, but it goes beyond that in a number of ways. It has all kinds of stuff that you could not have expected to happen, that you would not know until you got to the ending. Excuse me. It has all kinds of big plot twists, all kinds of shocks and surprises and turns. And it's just an ending that, like, you honestly could not have well known what it was going to turn into until you finally saw it. And because of that, because of the way Okubo structured the ending of Fire Force, it makes you, first of all, it recontextualizes the story, and it makes you not only think about the ending after you finish it, but it also makes you look back and rethink how you view the entire story. This is something that this ending of My Hero Academia does not even come close to. And this is what I mean when I say that this ending is too predictable. And to sort of explain what I mean, if you go on the internet, Reddit, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, if you look at theories, discussions for the ending of My Hero, I guarantee people are at least 60% right. And the reason for that is my biggest complaint about this ending, and this gets into the final arc, why I don't like the ending of the Shigaraki fight, why I don't like the ending of All for One, why I think a lot of the fights aren't that great, why I don't necessarily like the end of Dabi and the Endeavor stuff. It's all too predictable. Like, it's not just that it's cliche, but like, as a fan, as someone who's been reading this manga for 400 plus chapters, you basically could have predicted the bottom line of all these character arcs and plot lines 50 or 100 chapters ago. So whereas something like Fire Force resolves all of its character arcs and plot lines in satisfying ways, in ways that meet expectations, it also goes above and beyond in a way that meets expectations, but also shatters your expectations and delivers something even better. With My Hero, it meets your expectations exactly how you thought it was going to, in a way where there's no magic. And that's the bottom line of this chapter. It does what it's supposed to, but not what it should have. It's like a homework prompt where when you turn in the homework, you did everything you were asked to do, but you didn't deliver something that people were hoping for. You gave what was asked for, but you didn't do anything that people were hoping for. And that's kind of the problem with this ending, is it's very consistent with all of its central themes. It ties everything together in a way that makes the story coherent, It takes all of the foundation of the story to its logical end, shows what all of that stuff would look like in practice, but it's just not an exciting ending to a story. It's a satisfying conclusion, but it's not an exciting ending, is what I would say is wrong with this ending. Bare minimum, I wouldn't go so far. That's ballpark. I do think, it does do bare minimum would be like, I guess you could say bare minimum, but I wouldn't go that far. I do think in some ways, it is a good ending. Like, I do like that we get to see the characters in the time skip. I do think it's nice that there are a few things I like that aren't in this final chapter. Like, I do, as much as I'm so on it, I do like the stuff with Dobby and Endeavor. I really like the moment between Hawks and Lady Nagant. I like the stuff with the little kid. So in that sense, if you just look at the final chapter, it does feel kind of bare minimum. But if you look at the last 5 or 6 chapters, it does go a little beyond that. But if I were to summarize it in a few words, yeah, bare minimum. So what do I think about the Ochako controversy? Pretty much what I've been saying. It's like, it's too much of a... Another problem I have with this ending is, on top of being predictable, I think Horikoshi, and I have no way of proving this, but I think Horikoshi made too much of an effort to make this ending as inoffensive as possible. Because in another story, like, X characters would be dead, X characters would be married, right? And like, like there would be actual conclusions. With a lot of this stuff, it's like 90% of the story is left open-ended for readers to kind of decide on their own. So with Deku and Ochako, it's a very unsatisfying conclusion for them, because they have this moment in chapter, 428, and like they kind of connect, but also not really. And then in this final chapter, you do see them spend time together, but at the same time, she's shown to be one of the other students that basically never talks to Deku. But at the same time, if you turn to the page where they're talking about the quirk counseling program, and then you look at the final double spread, she's wearing a mask that looks suspiciously like Deku's mask. So it's like, it's intentionally open-ended. So if you do ship them, you can read that, you can, add that to the story, and there's a base for it. And if you don't ship them, then there's nothing explicitly that says they're a couple. But it almost has the opposite effect. It's like, if you do ship them, then you didn't really get a definitive answer. And if you don't ship them, you have a lot of stuff that's kind of shoved into your face. So it kind of has the opposite effect of like, it just pisses everyone off anyway. So I almost wish he had just said like, hey, they're a couple. Like, here they are going on a date 8 years later. So to answer your question, I don't like how we handled it. Do I think it's the worst possible outcome? No, but I think he tried too hard to make it open-ended. Yeah, Justin makes a good point. People I think people took the shipping a little too far. I think it's pretty clear. I think the ending of My Hero makes it pretty clear that Horikoshi never cared that much about ships. Which is so weird because he does so much to instigate them. Like all the stuff with Jiro and Kaminari, right? All the stuff with like the other people who clearly should have been couples, right? Like Mina and Kirishima, right? That was another teased couple, maybe. It's like, I think part of the reason people who ship these characters are so upset is like there's all this ammunition, but none of it really goes anywhere. Yeah, to say that Deku and Ochiko is more open-ended than Natsu and Lucy is pretty crazy. But it just goes to show, like, a lot of this stuff is predictable, it's cliche, and like it's the most inoffensive ending you could possibly have. I think what Horikoshi was going for is like an ending that, like, you know, it's open to interpretation. But it's not really what he does in practice. On that note, I feel like, so again, for anyone who didn't hear me before or is still curious, I would give this ending, this final chapter, a 7. It does just a bit more than the bare minimum, but clearly there's so much more that we should have seen out of this time skip, and it's just, there's no wow factor, there's no magic. On that note, I will leave a few more minutes to answer any last minute questions, and then I do want to check out some of the other chapters for this week. Townsy, what's going on? Townsy says mid-ass manga. So again, if the name Townsy doesn't ring a bell, big Twitter personality, and also I'm lucky enough to say that he's one of my editors and one of my friends. And also, he had a birthday this weekend, so I want to see all of you in the chat. There's 28 of you. I want to see all of you say happy birthday to Townsy. Without him and all the other great editors, we wouldn't have all these great videos. To win. Yeah. You know what I should have done is I should have posted on Twitter like, hey guys, I should have edited my homepage with all the birthday balloons. Been like, hey guys, surprise, it's my birthday. So Xenolith wants to know, do I agree that My Hero comes off pretty tone deaf in the grand scheme of things? What do you mean by tone deaf? So Justin said, I wonder what the anime will do with this ending. I wonder if it will add to it in season 8. I strongly suspect that there's going to be additional content in the final episodes. I don't think they're gonna add a whole volume's worth of content, but I do think in the time skip we'll see more of other characters. One thing I'm surprised I'm seeing nobody talk about is what happened with Stain. Because did Stain die? I don't think he died. Or did he? I can't remember. That feels like it was so long ago. But I was kind of surprised afterwards. I was like, so that's it? Nothing about Stain? One of the most iconic villains in the series? Which, to be fair, we got more than we could have asked for with Stain. He did get a redemption arc. But still, no cameo in the last 5 chapters is wild. Unless he's dead. I can't remember. To me, the series lost me when Chisaki got locked up. Since then, I legit forgot the series and often find 3 chapters got released in the meantime. I do like that Chisaki got everything that was coming to him. Like, he did everything for his boss, and then in the end, he reunites with his boss, and his boss is like, dude, you're a loser. Okay, so he did get killed. So that makes sense. Still, I wish there had been some reference to Stain. I mean, again, you can argue like that was the perfect ending for someone like Stain because he was such a vigilante and he didn't have a place in, normal world. But I do wish he had gotten some kind of reference or cameo in the final chapters, considering who he was and the impact he had on the story. Anyway, that's all I have to say for My Hero. And considering we've talked about My Hero for the last hour and 10 minutes, I think it's time we move on to a little manga called Jujutsu Kaisen. So for all of you out there who are not caught up on Jujutsu Kaisen or do not want to be spoiled, now is the time to cover those ears, because we're reading Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 265. Now, unlike the My Hero chapter, I have not read this chapter, so for the most part, I have zero idea what's going to happen. So this is more or less a pure reaction. So, to set the context, Yuji used a domain expansion, and it looks like they're at a train station. Possibly Shibuya? I don't know. I'm not familiar with Tokyo. But he and Sukuna are in their OG costumes. On rare occasions, dueling sorcerers bond with each other. I think it's a side effect of cursed energy arising from human emotion. But this is different. What's going on? Is this your domain? How should I know? I pulled it out in the middle of Mortal Kombat. I just wanted to talk, so hear me out. Alright, they're at some sort of statue. Only the locals know. Interesting. Oni Kenbai. I'll have to look that up. I was born in Sendai, but Gramps had to move for work. I lived here until I was 6 or 7, but I went back to Sendai. So it's like an urban neighborhood. I believe it's a Tokyo suburb, part of Tokyo. I'm not sure. And almost a direct reference to my thoughts on the My Hero chapter. He's talking about seeing his old town, and he goes, well, I wasn't surprised. To be honest, it's exactly what I was expecting, so it didn't make me feel anything. Suspiciously timed, considering how I feel about the My Hero chapter. So he's talking about how we used to play in the park. There was a toy slime. Morning glories, hydrangea. Oh, that's funny. He doesn't even know his flowers. I did not expect a chapter where Yuji and Sukuna would go fishing together. How weird is that? Are we playing Sonic right now? Are we playing Sonic on the Dreamcast right now? Someone in the modding community needs to make a mod of Sonic where, what's his name, Big the Cat, is dressed like Yuji. Please, someone go make that mod. So, for whatever reason, Yuji is showing Sukuna his hometown, and Sukuna's just kind of going along with it. So now they're at a horse farm, which apparently Sukuna requested to go to. Talking about ice cream, archery. So they're kind of going through the seasons now. So Sukuna finally cuts him off and he's like, all right, what the hell are we doing? And Yuji says, until recently, I thought life was about understanding your role and trying to fulfill it. If I had died doing that, then I could say I died a good death. But now I don't think that's right. Just walking your dog and raising a family are also decent roles. And even if all you do is eat and poop or lie sick and bad or don't connect with anyone and end up leaving nothing behind, instead of memories giving form to your life, small fragments of memory are out there anyway, floating around and giving your life value. How someone dies doesn't matter, but I can't forgive someone who acts as if those lives are worthless. That's why I hate you, Sukuna. Human beings are tools. They don't come into being with a predetermined role. Good guys, bad guys, I don't know which is truly human. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong, but I just wanted you to know this stuff. I wanted to show you the livelihood of the people you see as having no value. So the whole point of Yuji showing Sukuna his hometown and all these small town surroundings was, despite what he thinks of people as insects and worthless and power, like, people still have their day-to-day lives, and like, regardless of how he interacts with them, their lives inherently have value. And that's what he was trying to illustrate. It doesn't matter what their role is or whether they're good or bad. Life inherently has value in and of itself. And Sukuna's response appropriately is, yeah, I don't feel anything. I understand what you're saying, but it does nothing for me. Just like how you accepted this old dump of a town, I think, oh, so that's the case, but so what? So Sukuna is saying, are your anger and hatred really so piddling, or could it be that you pity me? Are you trying to be merciful? And Yuji's response is as cold as ever. Are you trying to be merciful? In other words, are you trying to go easy on me? And Yuji says, that's right. I can kill you. And he says, free Fushiguro. I'll spare you if you return. I'll spare you if you return to me. And Sukuna says, you're sorely mistaken. I'll tear you asunder. And then before your severed head, I'll kill all of those humans you prize so much. So this was a great chapter. This is probably one of my favorite chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen in a very long time. I think this is like the perfect, not climax, but perfect logical conclusion to Yuji's character arc of him finding his place in the world and trying to decide, like, what are you supposed to do with your life? He kind of just comes to the conclusion, like, you can do a lot with your life or you can do a whole lot of nothing. But regardless of what you do, your life and the lives around you naturally have value. Which I think is very consistent with everything we've seen in Jujutsu Kaisen. That regardless of your good, evil, left, right, up, down, whatever, everyone's life has value. Cursed spirit, human, rock, bug, dog, cat, everyone has value. And you do see for a moment that he kind of made a dent in Sukuna's armor in a sense, because Sukuna is very offended by this, that Yuji took the time to pity him, and now he seems really pissed off, which is not something a lot of the other characters have managed to do. So this brings us into the question of, like, well, what's going to come next? And one of the things I'm wondering is, how is this going to tie in with how he's affected other characters like Todo, like Choso, where he altered their memories? Because here he's showing Sukuna his memories. But now one of my questions is he suddenly going to do what he did to Todo and Choso, where he starts to mess with Sukuna's head? I'm curious to see how that will get addressed. But what does everyone else think? Townsy said, peace, y'all. Townsy, pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining in, man. Thank you for sharing your oh-so sophisticated review of my hero. Will I eventually talk about Kinyuku Man with its anime remake airing? Probably not, if I'm being totally honest. I might read the manga in my spare time, but I almost definitely will not do any kind of video on it, just because as popular as it is, I don't really think enough people would tune in to a video of that. Justin says, definitely was my favorite chapter. I loved the confirmation of a character that wasn't confirmed dead, now finally put to rest. I'm gonna leave that at that. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. It does kind of confirm that. For anyone who's like, oh no, they're definitely going to come back, just be patient. On that note, let's read the One Piece chapter, and then we'll call it a day. Because it seems like everyone's peacing out. So this is pretty cool. On the cover of chapter 1122, we get Oda redrawing Horikoshi's drawing of Smoker. I think that is such a nice tribute. And it's just a reminder of like how like connected all these authors are. Well, hello, Silver Comet. Thank you for stopping by. Pleasure to have you. In short, I did like the chapter ending for My Hero. Yeah, I agree. I like it. I don't love it, but I like it. Glad to see you enjoyed it. Unfortunately, we are kind of past the My Hero discussion, but regardless, thank you for joining the stream. We're looking at some other Jump chapters right now, and for the moment, we're reading the new One Piece chapter. That looks great from Oda. Yeah, the Smoker drawing is awesome. Zenith says, I'll miss MHA. Yeah, for better or worse, I'm going to miss having My Hero around. I love the characters. I think a year from now, I'll still look fondly on My Hero because of how iconic its characters are. So we have the giant robot. He's saying to Luffy, apparently, I wanted to apologize. He's saying to Luffy, I'm sorry, Joy Boy, that I couldn't make you king. So Luffy tells the robot his name. He says, I'm Monkey D. Luffy. So the robot uses Conqueror's Hockey. Interesting. With the Conqueror's Hockey, he sends all of the elders back to Mary Jo. And Emu seems to be responding that something about Luffy or the robot reminds them of Joy Boy, which is interesting. So we do get a confirmation that whoever Joy Boy was, he kind of looked like an amalgamation of Roger, Shanks, and Luffy. He's got like the long coat or cover, and he wears the straw hat. So this was a decent One Piece chapter. It does give us a bit of a tease of Joy Boy, which is nice to see, because I think regardless of where we go after this arc, I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that era, at least hopefully. But, you know, it was a decent chapter. And it does show at the very least that these elders aren't invulnerable and they are susceptible to Conqueror's Haki. But on that note, I think that's enough for today. There's a bunch of other chapters that I want to read, but I think this has been a long enough conversation for now. Obviously, there's a lot to say about my hero. So, just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in. This was a great stream, a ton of great conversation. Loved all the comments from everyone today. So thank you for an amazing turnout. Thank you for an incredible conversation. I am going to be streaming twice a week. Be on the lookout for a monthly update tomorrow. Apologies for it being late, but you will have it tomorrow. But in keeping with that update, I am going to be streaming regularly now, twice a week, once every Sunday, and then the other day, I'm not sure just yet what I want to make the other day for streams. I might just leave it as an open day, but for sure, at least every Sunday. Besides that, make sure to read the monthly update when it comes out tomorrow so you can see all the upcoming videos and other updates coming to the channel. But again, thank you so much, and I hope to hear from you soon.